Hi, Kachi here again, and in this video we will be looking at media queries. Before we delve into the writing of the codes and the rest of them, I have actually opened this page on the site so that we can look at how it behaves. And the whole summary around media query is writing a piece of code that informs your browser how your web application behaves when it hits certain breakpoint. I give you an instance. Now looking at this page, beautifully laid out, notice what this part of this page is going to look like eventually when we begin to shrink, and notice how this particular section of the page is also going to look like when we begin to scale down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and reduce the page just like this, so we can increase the page, we can increase the size of my window just this way. And as you can see now, this is presumed to be the desktop screen, right? So, and all the elements that we need are clearly displayed, everything in its position. But then by the time the screen starts to reduce, you'll see when this thing snaps, you see it is still trying to adjust itself, and at this point it snaps. So snapping now means that this menu where this links we are seeing on the top here automatically disappears and are wrapped inside a hamburger, something that is shown on this side. So let's continue. So you see it snaps, right? And even the logo of Salesforce no longer has Salesforce inscribed on it. So the image is just the image that we are seeing, no longer the image and the text. So it snaps into a hamburger and like this. And notice what also happens here. You see that this thing changes to just icon without a text, and the phone number is no longer there. If I click on this hamburger, you see all those other things are now showing inside the hamburger, right? Okay, so now let's continue. Now look at this. This is still panning out because we still have quite a good number, a good space available. But then let's continue to snap down, and then we continue again yourself until we get to this point. It moved this button now moves stacked on top of each other. All right, so then we'll continue again. Let's see what happens to this guy eventually, and what happens to this guy when we get to a very small screen. So we're going to continue, and then you see now this guy goes to be stacked under this particular page, beautifully laying out itself. Let's go just a little bit above that space, and you see what is happening. It is actually a straight edge at the top, but then when we go to that break point, you see it becomes a curve, right? And then it snaps to the bottom, and so on and so forth. And look at, okay, fine, I think this is where we're going to. Okay, look at what this thing becomes. You know, before we got to this point, it was stacking on top of each other. But when this guy moved, it remains, it's returned back to its flex. Then by the time we keep moving, then it stacks on top of each other. And I think this is what happens even on the small screen. And I think this is the smallest provision that we'll have for this application. So now when you have a page you're working on, when you have any page you're working on, it is important that you actually bear in mind what the behavior of the page looks like, because this is what you spend most of your time doing, right? When you write for, you can't write for one screen, it's not possible. You just have to write for at least 2 or more screens. And there are tools that can help you as a front-end developer to determine the sizes of various breakpoints. However, if you're using, although I'm using Edge on this system, if you're using something like Chrome or Firefox, even though yes, it works here, so I can come to my developers tool. I can come to my developers tool, inspect. Okay, I can go to my developers tool and I can take breakpoint. This is the width and this is the height. So this 760 is actually on a particular breakpoint, and we can move again. So let's say here, let's look for iPhone XR. So this is the width of 414, and this is exactly how it behaves when the screen size is 414. And then if you go to, let's go to Samsung Galaxy A51, this is 412, so it is pretty much within the neighborhood of 414. So most of the time what you would do is you have to let's say iPad Pro. Okay, so this is 1024. So the behavior differs in this particular page. So most of the time what you do is you might not write for individual breakpoint, you might just have to group the breakpoint. So, and we're going to look at that when we get to the writing of the code. Okay, so that being said, we'll move to what we are supposed to cover in this video. Alright, so now the first thing as usual is we want to open the folder that we'll be using to do this job. Then I'm going to open a new folder, and then my folder is possibly going to be inside document, and I have a project. I guess I have this project here. Okay, so inside here I want to create a folder. I'm going to call that Media Queries. And that's the folder I'm going to work on in this video. And we are not possibly going to create, we just want to look at breakpoints and how to work around the breakpoint. So here we want to, the first thing is to create the index.html file. Index.html file, and then, or possibly we'll have to create an asset folder, and inside asset folder we're creating styles, and then inside styles we are creating our styles.css file. Alright, so that's all, and then we'll go back to our index.html file, and then don't want this yet, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Okay, alright, so here our title is going to be media screen task, like that, and then we want to go live so that we can see exactly what we're doing, so we don't need this page. So while our live server is starting, let's write some code. So the first thing is, for every page, your page would always begin with the navigation bar. That's the first thing. Your page, there are 90% chances that your nav bar is usually placed at the top of your web application. There are 90% chances, except on rare cases where you have to do it otherwise, putting it by the side or putting it by the bottom, whatever it is. But there are heavy chances that your application would always have its navigation at the top. And what are the elements of your nav environment? The element of your nav environment is the brand identity, which is the logo of your company, then the links on one side, and possibly some buttons like quote and the rest of them, depending on on the interface that was designed or created for you to code. So now that we don't have a template we're working with, I'm just going to use a generic template, what is actually obtainable for everybody. So for that, the first thing I want to do is I'd like to link my CSS to my HTML. So I'm just going to do it once. And my CSS file is inside assets, styles, and I'm looking for styles or CSS. Now that being said, the next thing I want to do is, you know, if you had actually watched some of my previous videos, I've actually said something around leaving body as is and trying to create your own file just the way you want it. It gives me that flexibility, and that I'm just going to do it again. So I'm going to say section and main, which is going to wrap around. So instead of using body to do this, I'm doing my section. So this is going to be the thing that is wrapping around all the jobs that I want to do. And I'm going to give you an instance where this works. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create my nav. So I'm just going to do nav.navbar. .nav. So depending on whatever happens, I think nav is good. So I'm doing nav because that's going to be the navigation area, and some persons will do navbar, right? So some persons will do navbar depending on it. So let me do navbar. So that's supposed to be the top bar. Then in this navbar, I have I am doing something. Let me say brand, and in this brand I want to put in I want to put in an anchor, yes, because we need to be able to reroute our page somewhere. So I'm putting a navbar, and inside this navbar I want to put in an H2, and I'm going to call it my company, like this. So that's supposed to be the logo of my company, right? My company is supposed to be the logo of my company, and for now I think that's all I want to do. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to create the links. So I'm just going to do links, so which is supposed to be the thing that will list out the links eventually when I am clicking on it. So inside this link I'm going to do UL, and I'm going to do a couple of LI. I'm just going to do 4 for now. We have home. So inside each of this LI I want to put an anchor so that these links will be clickable. So anchor is a dead link, and I'm going to say home, and I'm going to do, so just for a moment let me get rid of the rest of them so I don't have to type too much. I'm just going to get rid of this. So here now I'm going to create this. Okay, so I'm saying home, and I have about, and I have let's say contact, and I have the last one possibly going to be hire me, like this. Okay, so these are the things that I want to actually style. Then the last thing but not the least is I want to actually create, in the case of Salesforce, as you can see here, I want to create this navbar, right? I want to be able to create this navbar. I mean this hamburger they call it. So I want to create this hamburger. So now, because I am writing my own code, so I also have to make provisions for that. So here now I'm going to do hamburger like this, and then inside this hamburger, well, we have multiple processes to do this. I think there is a HTML special entity that can help us achieve this with just a line of code, right? But then let's do the hard way, because it's also going to help us understand that these things are not like carved on stone. There are things you can do by yourself. So I'm going to do span, And this span, I'm just going to do 3 of them because they're going to be 3 lines. So I'm going to do span 3 lines. And remember that span is actually an inline element. So if I do something like this, it is actually going to be 0, 0, 0 on one line, right? So, but then we'll get to this in a moment. All right, and I think that's all we need to do to set up our nav. If I maximize this, you'll see it is going to be like this. If I restore my page, it is actually going to be again like that. So this is where CSS comes in handy. So now let's go look at what we can achieve with our CSS. So I'm going to click my CSS file to open it, and then the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to style this. So we're going to do margin so that we just clear. For example, if I do background color here, and I'm doing red, you'll see that that's just red is going to cover the entire space, right? But it is covering the entire space because this is actually going to be inherited by body. So, but if, for example, now I do something like, let me say I am doing something like .nav, navbar rather. I'm doing .navbar. So let me take a moment to explain this again. Remember that we have nav, right? We have nav. This is an element, and then this is a class of this element. So in my CSS, I have either of the option of saying .navbar or simply calling nav. It is actually going to refer to the same thing. So if I do this and I say background color, and I'm throwing red, you will notice that there's going to be spaces around it. So we have a space on the top here and we have a space on the left here. So because of this space, which is actually your browser pre-formatted, right? So this setting comes with your browser, and as a developer, we don't want to say yeah, this page is actually looking beautiful on my own browser. Maybe your own browser is bad. We don't want to do that. Rather, what we want to do is we want to make provisions to accommodate everybody, regardless of the browser you're using. I mean, my application should be able to render perfectly fine on your machine. So because of that, we always do this to reset the settings that comes with your browser. So the few keywords we're going to use here is margin, and this is going to reset the margin. As you can see, let's reset the margin, and most of the time it also makes sense that you reset the padding. So as you can see, what happens now, it flushes that into base, and then we want to do box sizing, which is going to be a border box like this. So it's very important that you do these settings each time you're starting an application, so that it gives you that privilege of actually positioning your browser to work the way you want it to work. So I don't need this red, and this red, I actually need this red so that I know what section I'm working with. So instead of this red, I'm possibly going to do green, and that green is not going to be a very deep green. I want a black shade of green, something like this. Let's come a little bit up here, and remember, when I do this, I can always change to my hex code, so at least I can easily remember this number as against the RGB pattern. All right, so that's the first thing we want to do. Then the next thing we want to do is, which is regular, because you know that these things, because they are block element, will automatically stack on top of each other. So the next thing we want to do here is we'll probably want to do display flex just this way so that you can see it. So you know that that we did padding 0 on line 3, and it shifted the list item. Does not mean that the bullet is hidden. I mean, it's not there again. It is still there, but it's just because we remove the padding, it's looking as if it is flushing, so it is adding some minus detail to the padding. So when we do display flex, you'll see it is going to be like this. And one other thing you are not noticing is that there's supposed to be a span here, right? There's a span here, because if I go back to my HTML, this is inside this nav that we're actually targeting. There are 3 elements within the nav. This is the first element, and this is the second element, and this is the third element. So now you are not noticing the third element here because there is no content in the third element. So if I come to the third element and I possibly do something like this, you'll see that the third element is actually there. Alright, the third element is actually there, but because there is no content in the third element, it is looking as if it is not there. We are going to style the third element the way we want eventually, but then let's continue styling this. Now that we have done this, the next thing we want to do is we basically want this thing to be on the far end here, and we want my company to remain where it is. So now we're going to do justify content, and then justify content we're going to do space between, like this, space between, just like this. And then you're going to notice that it looks as if this guy is not behaving the way we want it to be, because space between, I'm supposed to create an even space between this element and this element, but then it is now creating it as if there is an abstract element here. Yes, of course, there's an element here. The reason why we are not seeing that element yet is because we have not styled the element. So let me take a moment to style this element so that we have sure that there's an element here, so that we know when this guy behaves the wrong way, we understand the reason why it is behaving the way it is behaving. So let's go back to our HTML, and we are actually going to grab hamburger, right? So remember that we can style elements in relatively to its parent. So I'm going to do dot hamburger. I'm going to do hamburger. Then let me just do this for a moment. So in my hamburger, let's say I'm saying weight is 12px, and height is also 12px. Creating a square, and then I'm throwing background color for a moment. I'm throwing background color gray, like this. You'll see that that guy is going to be there. Okay, so gray is not very clear, so let me make it white. White. Alright, so you see that the element is actually there, right? So the element is actually there. So I just want to create that as a placeholder for now. Let's possibly increase this to maybe 15. Even though, yeah, this is not what we'll do eventually, because we have to create that that hamburger, the 3 bars. Alright, so but this is just a placeholder to let us know that the reason why this guy is not snapping to the extreme right is because this guy exists, and we are saying space between, so it is going to create an equal space between every element within that range. Now that that has been settled, let's look at what align item will do here. Align item is basically going to ensure that these items are aligned vertically right, because as you can see now, everything is stacked to the top of that that nav. So we're going to do align items, and we're going to do center. So you'll see that everything will now be, so if this is not stay arranged to be like this format, then everything will be in one straight line, and that's what align item is going to help us to do. All right, so now that we have styled our nav and it's looking good, remember there is something that we are still missing, but we are going to be taking it one step at a time. Now the next thing we want to possibly do is we want to focus on this element, and we want to break it down to how we want it to look like. Alright, so here we are going to come back to our HTML file, and what we are targeting now is inside the links. Remember, we said we can style these things in relation to relatively to its parent. So I'm going to grab it again. I'm going to grab links. I hope my spelling is correct. Yeah, links. I'm grabbing links, and I am grabbing UL, right? So now Now UL is what is creating this bullet, because it is unordered, so it is the one that is creating this bullet. So the first thing we want to do is want to remove those bullets. So we're going to say list style type, none, like this, and you see that those bullets will disappear. For now, this is all I want to do on my UL, and I'm going to target my links ULLI. So this approach is because I have not given my LI a distinct class name, so to say. So I am referencing it from its parent element. So UL links ULLI. What do I want to do? I want to make these guys aligned in one line. So I'm going to say display. I'm going to do inline block, just like this. And as you can see now, everything is pretty much spanning out well. If you look at my HTML, if you look at the HTML we are using, you will see that inside my LI there is an anchor. An anchor is what makes it actually clickable, right? So we'll come back here and then let's target the anchor, right? So I'm going to do .links ULLI anchor. So we're going to do a couple of things here. The first thing I want to do is I want to remove those underlines. So I'm going to do text decoration, and I'm going to say none, like that. So get rid of those underline. Then it looks as if they are so close to each other. I'm going to do something like margin and margin top and bottom at 0, and margin left and right. I probably want to do 15px, like that. So it creates some quite beautiful spaces around it, so just make it readable. Then when I come there, you see what happens, right? So you can see it now. So it is clickable, right? So, and then let me say I want to do text transform. It's up to you, whatever you want to do here. It's really up to you. There's no rule that says it must be like this, uppercase. And then whatever you do here, I mean, nobody is going to question you. It's whatever you're doing here should be based on what your interface looks like. I mean, the template that was handed over to you from the product engineers, that's exactly what you're going to do here. So it is not a matter of I'm doing it because I know how to do it, right? It is I am doing it based on the standard that is handed down to me. So now I think our color is not good. I don't understand what kind of combination blue and green will look like. So then we are going to do color. Okay, so now yeah, we're going to do color, and possibly we're going to be doing white. I'm going to be doing white, and let's see if that works. So I think makes sense really, and I think pretty much I think that's it. Okay, so you may want to make it look like button really. So let's see if we can do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do border 1px solid, like this, as you can see now. So we want to style it to look like a button. Now that we have done that, it's still sticking to the side to the it looks as if there is no space. So I'm going to create a space there. I'm going to do padding to create a space, and I'm focusing on the left and the right because it looks as if the top and the bottom is looking fine. So I'm just going to do maybe like 5px on the top and bottom, and then on the left and right I'm going to do 10px, just like this. All right, so I think it's fine. So 5px looks big. I'm going to do 3px. Okay, so I think this works, and then possibly want to do border radius, because remember we are styling it to look like a button. Border radius, I'm going to do 3px, so I just a little bit curve on the edges, right? And then okay, so I want to, like I said, there is no rule that says this is what you must do. We are only doing this because we are working with the standard that is handed down to us by the UI UX. So I'm looking at the space between them is much, so I'm going to reduce this margin by 5, just this way. All right, so this looks good to me. Then another thing I want to do is I want it to be a little bit interactive, so that by the time I move my cursor on each of them, it shows me that I am the active guy, right? So I want to do dot links. Sorry, I'm just making a mistake. Dot links, ULLIA, and then on hover, like this. So on hover, we don't have a background color yet. So on hover, I just want to throw in a background color of, say, I'll say white, and I think green and white looks good. So, and I'm going to say color is 678F67. So it goes on to say that as it is now, if I hover on it, it should change, right? So it should change, right? So that's just what I did, right? So it should bring in the color. The color of the text should be the color of this background, and the background of the page of that particular element should be the white, just like this, right? Okay. All right. So this is something you have to do. I mean, yeah, of course, it's all about your own pattern of writing code. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we now want to come and target this our hamburger. We want our hamburger to look exactly how we want it to look. All right, so for that purpose, I wouldn't be needing this. I wouldn't be needing that because we don't want that background. So we're going to say hamburger span like this, because again we are styling the span element, right? Inside hamburger there is span. So what do we want to do? The first thing we want to do is that we want our span to have a width, and then the width is going to be, say, 10px, right? And then we want our span to have a height, and the height is possibly going to be 3px. That's quite a number. Then so we have created what we are doing here is that we have created a tick box, right? Some box of 10px wide and a height of 3px. So, but remember that because it doesn't have a content in them yet, there is no way you will see it. So for this purpose, it's either we'll add a border or we'll add a background. In my own case, I'm going to add a background color of, say, black, like this, and you're just going to see that it's going to be a tick element that we possibly are not seeing now. And then we're going to do display, and our display is going to be block. Yep, block. Now you can see it now. You see that this guy is actually there, as you can see it here now, is there now, but then it is actually looking like a box. So let me increase this so we can see this in effect. All right, so it's actually looking like a box because being, and you know that this is actually what brought it out, because as an inline it is actually one line, right? So we'll make it block like this. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create spaces between them. So we're going to do margin, and this margin we are going to throw in, we're actually interested in top and bottom, so let me do 5px and 0, and then you see what happens. So 5px is quite a number. I want to do something like 3px, and that's fine. And I think what we are doing here is the height seems to be too much, so we want to do something like 2px. All right, so this works. And then instead of background color being black, we can do background color being white. So I can throw in my hexadecimal value here. So, and I think that looks good. That looks good, except that I may want to increase this margin. So let's go back to 5. All right. So that looks good to us. So what this means is, by the time, whether I am on a large screen or I'm on a small screen, it's going to display something like this. Okay. So now one other thing I want to look at before we move on is, it looks to me as this, my company and these things, they are flushing on the extreme edges of the page. So let's go back to our nav, because that is what we are doing. So here in our nav, I want to add some padding. So I'm going to do padding, and then this padding, I don't want padding on the top and the bottom. I think I'm good with that. So I'm going to do 0, and I'm going to do left and right. I'm going to do some 5px, and I think that's pretty much it. So it gives a little bit allowance on the edges, so we are not flushing to the edge of the browser, as it were. All right. So this is our nav, and I think we possibly will want to do, maybe let's just do 5px round clock. Right. So okay. So we have some allowances here and there on this. Now, and I think this exactly is what we want to do. But then remember that what we are dealing with today is media query, and media query is giving us the flexibility to be able to say, okay, fine, when we hit this certain breakpoint, behave like this. When we hit this certain breakpoint, behave like this. So now, how do we do that? The first thing is, let us go to our hamburger, because we are styling this desktop screen first. So okay, so what we want to do is, we want to remove this. Now notice that if I do display none here, it hides this, but it does not shift this to where it's supposed to be. The reason is because we are actually targeting the span. The span is hidden, but the hamburger is still showing. So what it means is that if I should come here now and target my hamburger, and I say width is, I'm saying width is say 10px, and then height is 10px, and I'm saying background color is red. You'll see it is going to show there, right? So when we say display none on span, we are simply saying hide those 3 bars we have created, but the hamburger is still there. The only reason why we are not seeing it is because we have not styled the hamburger. So what I'm trying to explain in essence is, this display none will not be here. In essence, will not be here. So I'm going to get rid of this display none here. Then instead, I'm going to come to this block, which is my hamburger, and I'm going to say display is none. So that, and now you'll see that this guy actually shifted appropriately. So this guy shifted appropriately. All right. Now at this point, we would now start. Let's begin to look at the various breakpoints that we can actually walk through. Now that this is done, the first thing is, what are the key elements to bear in mind when we talk about breakpoint or media screens. Now, when we look at the documentation of media, detailed. So okay, so at media rules in CSS. All right, so we have so have media screen, right? And then yeah, so we'll have the media types, right? So the first one is media all, suitable for all devices. and then we have the media print intended for paged materials and document view on the screen in preview mode. So when you do media print, if eventually you send the page to a printer, the way you have actually styled your print is the way it will come out on a paper. So if you're building something that has to do with POS or EdTech, and then you know that the result will be printed, you are going to create the same HTML. HTML is always HTML, so you're going to use your media type to define the things that you should be showing when it comes to receipt, and possibly how the receipt will be formatted and how your result and stuff like that will be formatted. For everything that will be going through the printer, you do media print to it. Then we have media screens. This is intended primarily for screens. So this is where you're going to do all the styling that is going to be showing on multiple screens. So if you want it to on this particular screen, you write it, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to I'll drop the link to this on the description, and I'm going to so that you can go through it at your own leisure time. It is good that you read documentation, because of course this thing is not what we came. Even the people who wrote this, all these functions and method, would always come back to it, and this is their way of telling us how this thing behaves. All right. So now what we want to do now is let's write the media screen. And before we start writing the media screen, let us understand how these things are going to behave. The first thing is that when we are on a very large screen like this one, we want to be able to see this and want to be able to see this list like this. But when the screen becomes smaller, like for example, let me just throw this here now. And let's look at how this thing looks when it comes to a very small screen. And then you understand why it is important. And I look at what it's looking like. So on this screen it's still fine. There's no problem, because I mean we have quite an ample space. But then let's go to a small screen. Let me say iPhone XR, and then you see it looks horrible, right? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would you want, if anybody should write this thing and present to your company, would you pay the person a dime? You wouldn't want to pay, because it's not looking professional at all. And this is the beauty of media queries. So now we have actually grabbed that the first screen we want to write is 414. Then let's go to pixel 7, which is 412. As you can see, it doesn't make any sense. And then let's go to Galaxy S20 Ultra or something, yeah. And then it doesn't make any sense, because all of them are in the neighborhood of 4112 width, right? So now, what we want to do now is we want to go and grab for the provision of let's say 420, right? So let's go and grab for provision of 420. And what we want to do is that we don't want this to show, right? We don't want this to show, but we want this, the hamburger, should show somewhere. So now we'll get back to our CSS and let's do some juggling around. So let's do some juggling around. So just a minute so I can reduce this. All right, so we can see it here now. So we want to grab for 420 screen. So I'm going to do at media screen, and max width. Okay, so I'll take time to explain this in a moment. Max width 420 px, like this, and then I'm doing this. All right, so now when we throw in our media screen, we can do conditional chaining. So we can do min width, max width, and then we can do max width and we can do min width. But let me explain the max width. So when we say max width 420px, what we are trying to say or to tell our browser is that from the provision of 0px to 420px, apply the following rules, right? If we say min width, we are saying that from that point up to whatever point we are getting to, apply this, right? So if I'm saying max width 420px, so I'm saying from 0 to 420px. So what this means is it's going to cover for 380px, it's going to cover for 410px, 414, and 412, even up to 419px, right? And even up to 420px, so to say. So now, what are the things we want to do? The first thing is that we want our hamburger to be block. So we want our hamburger to show. So we want to say dot hamburger, and then we're saying display is block. That's the first thing. As you can see, it is there. Now we don't want our links to show, right? We don't want our links to show because it is the link that is showing all these things. So we'll go back here again, and then the second rule is dot links. The second rule will be dot links, and then we are saying display none, just like this. So now we have it like this. Now it making sense. Then this is not the only thing we want to do. We may want to also say that at this point, let's target our nav like this, and we are saying background color should be blue, like this, and then it works, right? And then instead of blue, because I already have blue for this, let me just do this. So what we are saying in essence is that the behavior will be totally different from what we saw when we are using the large screen. It's going to be totally different. All right, so nav, and then I want to do dot brand, I think, yeah, dot brand, and I'm saying color. Because of that, I'm saying color should be white, and like this. Oh, is that what I'm saying? No, brand, what's that again? Sorry, brand anchor. Yeah, brand anchor. So not just brand, but brand dot anchor. All right, so I think that works. All right, so and pretty much that is it. Okay, so let's go check another breakpoint. And then iPad Air is 820. I think this looks good, as you can see now. Okay, so let's see if we can begin to mark the breakpoint that is good. Let me make it responsive. Yep. So here now, it is good up to this point. It is still making sense, but I think 580, we shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't do anything like this in 580. So we need to go and write again for, let's say, 580. Okay, so let's get up to 673. So we are going to come out of this media, and we're going to write another media. So I'm going to say at media screen and max width. And let's say we are doing 680px, right? So we want to, okay, so we want to apply all the things we did here. So, or maybe let me apply something different. Let me just see if I can change slightly background. So everything we did here should apply, except some minor changes. Everything we did here should apply, except that in this case, I want my background to be a little bit yellowish, like this, and then let me say some black yellow, right? Yep. Okay, so now we've gotten about 3 variants of this web application, right? So the first one is when we are on a large screen, right? It's green and white and blue. When we are on a smaller screen, you see the breakpoint. So it gets to the breakpoint and it behaves just the way we want it to behave. Okay, so I think we need to change this color so we know when it is changing, because everything looks pretty close. All right, and then 420. All right, so this is overwriting this. This is overwriting it because this covers the provisions for this also. But if I want this to, I can come here. I can come here and make this come here like this. Okay. All right. So you see now. So we are in 411, which is this provision, and then now I have gone past 420. You see what happens? I'm back to within the threshold of 420. You see, my company is still white color, which is my CSS on line 76. All right. But once I go past 420, I'm 424. We are applying the code on line 60 like this. And then let's watch out for 680px here. And then let's continue 680px. We'll continue. And now we are in 678. Now we are in 683. It returns to the original page. Okay, so this is what you should do, and because this is exactly what media screen or media query will help us to do. Again, now look at the number of things we have to write just to style the nav and things like that. And this is what you have to do over and over again when it comes to writing a web page. All right, so this is the much I can go for today. I'll see you again in the next video.